Hey, did you ever notice how many kinds of things have feet? Huh, weird. Anyway, let's talk about structural evidence of evolution. These are your EVO 2.0 Level 1 notes. Let's go. It's me, Moser. After this video, you should be able to recall and identify terms related to the structural evidence of evolution, identify examples of homologous structures and shared derived characteristics, and identify parts of a cladogram, including common ancestors and shared derived characteristics. It'd be awesome if you already knew what speciation is, and that evolution is a change in allele frequency, or the distribution of a trait. There are two broad categories of evidence of evolution that we'll discuss in this class: structural, also called morphological evidence, and chemical evidence. So let's start by looking at some of the terms that you'll need to understand, discuss, and work with structural evidence of evolution. Morphology is simply the study of the physical shape or form of things. And we use the word morphology to talk about both internal and external structures of living things. When we're discussing evolution, we often compare the morphology of species to explore how they might be related. The fossil record refers to fossils that humans have found over many, many years. One individual fossil is only a part of the larger fossil record. Now, some organisms in some environments create better fossils. Not all organisms leave any fossils behind, so the fossil record is not complete, but that's okay. We still have many of the pieces that we need to understand the evolutionary history of life on Earth. And it's important to understand that one fossil is cool, but the fossil record refers to the mass of fossils found all over the world and the way scientists can put those together to understand Earth's history from them. Now, we've talked about common ancestors before, and we've discussed how sometimes two species arise out of one when speciation occurs. When we see two species become different from each other, we can say that they have diverged. This is called divergent evolution. They used to be one species, but they've become different as each adapted to their environment. In some cases, we can see structures that two species share that look very similar in their underlying details, because those structures are actually modified versions of some structure that an ancestor species had. We call these homologous structures. The prefix homo means same, and these are structures in two or more different species that look the same and share structural characteristics because they were inherited from a common ancestor. Homologous structures may or may not share a function, but the underlying structure is shared. The bones of the human arm and hand share structure with the horse's leg and foot, dolphin's flipper, and bat wings, even though we all use those structures a little differently. But how do we keep track of all these common ancestors and evolutionary relationships? Well, there are several ways to show these relationships, but we'll use a cladogram. A cladogram is a branching diagram that shows points in history where species diverged. Each junction or split below a pair of species, like that one, shows the last point at which they had a common ancestor. Those yellow dots all represent common ancestors, as do all those. There are a couple different styles of cladogram, and we'll use as many of them as possible. Shared derived characteristics are characteristics that two species share that are derived or gotten from their common ancestor. For instance, wolves and raccoons and fish and snakes all have a bony backbone. This is a characteristic they share and they each got or derived from a common ancestor. Shared derived characteristics are shown on a cladogram below all the organisms that have that shared derived characteristic. So, wolves and raccoons have hair or fur. Everything Down below, fish, snakes, and lampreys don't. To converge. When two things come together, like these roads here, they converge. When two species end up with a similar structure, not because they have a common ancestor, but because a structure like that gave them each an advantage in their environment, we call it convergent evolution. Wings. Insects have wings, so do birds. Are these wings something that they each inherited from some shared ancestor, some common ancestor? No! They independently evolved wings because the challenges that they faced caused wings to be selected for. How can we tell? Well, these wings don't share an underlying structure. They just share a function. Okay, are you able to recall and identify some of the terms related to structural evidence of evolution? Can you pick out an example of a homologous structure or shared derived characteristic? And could you identify the parts of a cladogram, including common ancestors and shared derived characteristics? Well, then that's it for now. Have fun!